This movie had a goblin king in glam rock tights stealing a child, and this one had space cowboys battling aliens from another dimension, and still bombed at the box office. These are 12 80s movies that flopped miserably. Number 12, Labyrinth, 1986.
Go back to your room. Play with your toys and your costumes.
If you were a kid in the mid-80s and caught the trailer for Labyrinth, you probably couldn't quite figure out what you were looking at. There was a young Jennifer Connelly, an entire world brought to life by Jim Henson's puppets, and David Bowie, yes, the David Bowie, commanding the screen as the Goblin King in full glam rock style. The setup was just as strange as it was intriguing. A teenage girl named Sarah, fed up with babysitting, wishes her baby brother would vanish. And then it actually happens. On paper, it seemed unstoppable. The puppetry was some of the most advanced ever attempted. The sets were massive and imaginative, and the whole thing felt like a fever dream brought to life. But when it landed in theaters in 1986, the reaction was cold. Parents found it too strange for younger kids, while adults dismissed it as too whimsical for them. In the end, it earned less than half of its $25 million budget in the US. The real magic happened later. Once it hit VHS and started airing on cable, it found the audience it was always meant for. Number 11, The Thing, 1982.
Mom, I just have to put an end to you on Johnny Principle stalls.
It's hard to believe now, but when John Carpenter's The Thing came out, it was considered a failure. In the summer of 1982, audiences had just fallen in love with Spielberg's E.T., a heartwarming story about befriending a cute alien. Then Carpenter drops a film about a parasitic extraterrestrial that can perfectly imitate any living thing, and brutally kills in the process. Yeah, the contrast couldn't have been sharper. Set in a remote Antarctic research station, the movie follows a crew of scientists and a chopper pilot, played by Kurt Russell, as paranoia spreads through the camp. Anyone could be the Thing. And once it reveals itself, Rob Bottin's practical effects make sure you see every grotesque, jaw-splitting, tentacle-sprouting detail. The atmosphere is suffocating, the trust between characters disintegrates, and the ending leaves you questioning who, if anyone, survives. But in '82, it didn't land. Critics found it too bleak, too gory, even nihilistic. On a $15 million budget, it made just under $20 million worldwide, and Carpenter's reputation with studios took a hit. Number 10, Highlander, 1986. There can be only one.
Will you light a candle and remember me on my birthday?
These 4 words would go on to define one of the most enduring cult classics of the 80s, but not at the box office. Highlander follows Connor MacLeod, a Scottish Highlander who survives a fatal wound in battle, only to discover he's part of a race of immortals destined to fight each other through history until only one remains. Trained by Ramirez, played by a scene-stealing Sean Connery, MacLeod faces his ultimate rival in modern-day New York. The film is drenched in style, sweeping historical flashbacks, epic sword fights, and a Queen soundtrack that absolutely rocks. But in 1986, it tanked in the US, making less than $6 million domestically against a budget of around $19 million. But Highlander had one thing going for it: personality. On VHS and TV, its unique mix of fantasy, history, and rock opera spectacle caught fire. It spawned sequels, most of them bad, a long-running TV series, and an unshakable place in pop culture. Number 9, Big Trouble in Little China, 1986.
It's all in the reflexes. Wang.
When John Carpenter and Kurt Russell teamed up again in the mid-80s, they didn't just make another action movie, they made this. And this is hard to even describe. We're talking a loudmouth truck driver who thinks he's the hero of the story. Then drop him into a hidden world under San Francisco's Chinatown, where ancient sorcerers throw lightning, monsters lurk in the shadows, and kung fu battles break out in the streets. That's Big Trouble in Little China, part martial arts flick, part supernatural fantasy, part comedy, and completely unclassifiable. Back in '86, that was the problem. The studio had no clue how to sell it. Was it an action movie, a comedy, a martial arts fantasy? The answer was basically all of the above. But that didn't help. Number 8, The Adventures of Buckaroo Bonsai, Across the Eighth Dimension, 1984.
Repeat, advise you cancel phase 2.
What if your main character is a brain surgeon, a rock star, a particle physicist, and a dimension-hopping hero? He's got a band of stylish sidekicks called the Hong Kong Cavaliers. They fight alien criminals from another dimension. Oh, and the movie never stops to explain any of it. It just assumes you've been watching the Buckaroo Bonsai saga for years, even though this is literally the first and only one. That's Buckaroo Banzai. Peter Weller plays the coolest multi-hyphenate hero in history, strolling through a world packed with weird gadgets, deadpan jokes, and rules that make zero sense unless you've somehow lived in this fictional universe your whole life. Back in 1984, people were confused. They didn't know what to do with it. It cost about $6 million to make and barely scraped that back, which meant the teased sequel, Buckaroo Bonsai Against the World Crime League, died on the spot. But here's the thing. Once it hit VHS, the weirdness became the selling point. Number 7. Brazil, 1985.
This whole system of yours could be on fire, and I couldn't even turn on a kitchen tap without filling out a 27.
Terry Gilliam's Brazil is one of those movies where you're never sure if you're watching a dream or a full-blown bureaucratic nightmare. It drops you into a retro future world that's equal parts sci-fi and absurd comedy, where low-level government worker Sam Lowry lives a dull, routine life. Until one tiny clerical mistake flips everything upside down. That error sends the wrong man to prison, and when Sam tries to make it right, he ends up stuck in a mess of government paranoia, suspected terrorism, and his own elaborate daydreams of freedom. Visually, it's a knockout, think George Orwell's 1984, but with the surreal, offbeat flavor of Monty Python. The sets are massive, the imagery is strange and beautiful, and the tone swings from bleak to hilariously absurd in a heartbeat. But back in 1985, all that ambition didn't exactly pack theaters. Gilliam clashed hard with the studio over how the movie should end, leading to multiple cuts and release delays. By the time it hit US screens, it made less than $10 million on a $15 million budget. Number 6, Heaven's Gate, 1980.
And tell them they're completely surrounded, and they must surrender immediately.
Few box office disasters have been as unbelievable as Heaven's Gate. On paper, this thing had award season darling written all over it. Michael Cimino had just come off The Deer Hunter, which cleaned up at the Oscars, and United Artists basically handed him the keys to the kingdom, complete creative control, and a budget starting at $7.5 million. But somewhere along the way, that budget exploded to about $44 million, which was astronomical for 1980. Cimino became notorious for obsessively rebuilding entire sets, demanding take after take, and starting sweeping postcard-perfect shots of Wyoming that were gorgeous, but insanely expensive. The plot was pulled from real history, the Johnson County War of the late 1800s, a bloody clash between rich cattle barons and immigrant settlers. It was aiming to be a grand, gritty epic about greed and power in the American West, but Cimino's first cut clocked in at almost 4 hours, which meant theaters could only squeeze in a couple of showings a day. People didn't just dislike it, they went for the jugular. Vincent Canby of the New York Times famously called it an unqualified disaster. United Artists yanked it from theaters after just 1 week, trimmed it down, and tried again. The shorter version flopped too. Number 5, Krull, 1983. If you weren't around in the early 80s, it's hard to understand just how desperate studios were to find the next Star Wars. Columbia Pictures thought they had it with Krull, a strange hybrid of medieval fantasy and space opera. The film follows Prince Colwyn, who sets out to rescue his bride from an alien overlord called the Beast. Along the way, he gathers a ragtag band of warriors, wizards, and thieves and wields the glaive, a magical bladed throwing star that became the movie's signature weapon. The production was massive, with sprawling sets and elaborate costumes. It cost around $27 million to make, a hefty price tag for a fantasy film in 1983. Unfortunately, the story never quite came together. The tone shifted awkwardly between Arthurian quest and alien invasion, and the special effects, while ambitious, didn't have the polish of Lucasfilm's output. People panned it as muddled and derivative, and audiences stayed away. It grossed just $16 million worldwide, far short of what it needed. Number 4, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, 1988.
Perhaps you would care for a little light entertainment while you wait.
Terry Gilliam shows up on this list again, and this time it's with one of the most over-the-top movie adventures of the 80s, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Based on the outrageous yarns of an eccentric 18th century nobleman, the story follows the Baron as he recalls his unbelievable exploits, sailing to the moon, escaping from the belly of a giant sea creature, and pulling off one impossible stunt after another. It's pure fantasy brought to life, with fantastical sets, extravagant costumes, and special effects that look like they were ripped straight from a book. But the magic on screen came at a steep price, literally. Behind the scenes, the production was a circus. Gilliam clashed constantly with Columbia Pictures. The budget ballooned to around $46 million, and the shoot was plagued by one problem after another. By the time it was finished, the studio seemed ready to wash its hands of the whole thing. They gave it a tiny release, barely promoted it, and as a result, most American moviegoers had no clue it even existed. It limped away with less than $10 million at the US box office. Critics didn't know quite what to make of it either. Some were dazzled by its imagination, calling it a visual masterpiece. Others thought it was too chaotic, too indulgent, and way too expensive for what it delivered. For Gilliam, it was another chapter in his growing reputation as a brilliant but difficult filmmaker. Still, time has been far kinder than 1988 ever was. These days, Baron Munchausen is praised as a work of wild creativity, filled with moments that look like moving works of art. Back then, though, it was one of Hollywood's priciest punchlines. Number 3, Ishtar, 1987.
You are so beautiful. You are so beautiful.
Ishtar is one of those movies that's almost more famous for how it failed than for what's actually in it. The setup sounded golden. Elaine May directing, Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman starring, and a goofy story about two terrible lounge singers who somehow get tangled up in Middle Eastern politics. That's the kind of cast and premise you'd bet on without thinking twice. But instead of a smooth, easy shoot, the whole thing turned into a slow-motion train wreck. The budget started out fine, then spiraled completely out of control, jumping from $27 million to over $50 million. Filming in Morocco was a headache from day one. Sandstorms, on-set arguments, and a production that felt cursed. The gossip coming out of the shoot was juicier than the movie itself, and by the time it hit theaters, Ishtar was already branded a disaster. Critics tore into it, audiences ignored it, and it limped away with just $14 million in ticket sales. These days, it's got a tiny cult following and even a few big-name directors who swear it's underrated. But back in 1987, nobody was talking about its quirky humor or satire. They were talking about how one of the most expensive comedies ever made completely tanked. Number 2, Bladeunner, 1982.
Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion.
It's kind of crazy now, but Blade Runner totally flopped when it first came out. Yep, the same movie that's now considered a sci-fi masterpiece didn't impress a whole lot of people back in 1982. Directed by Ridley Scott and starring Harrison Ford, it told the story of Deckard, a guy whose job is to track down and retire rogue replicants, artificial humans hiding in a gloomy, futuristic Los Angeles. The movie looked amazing, full of glowing cityscapes, flying cars, and rainy alleyways. It asked deep questions about what makes someone truly human. But here's the thing, most people just didn't get it. It came out right after E.T., which was all heart and hugs, while Blade Runner was dark, slow, and a little weird. Some critics thought it dragged. Others didn't know what to make of it. And regular moviegoers mostly skipped it. It cost about $30 million to make, but didn't even make that back in US theaters. But today, it's legendary. Over the years, it got re-released, re-edited, and totally re-evaluated. That gritty look basically invented cyberpunk, and its ideas about identity and humanity feel more powerful than ever. Turns out Blade Runner was just ahead of its time. Finally, at number 1, Mac and Me, 1988.
Get off, Larry. Get away from it. Reverse the ad sample.
Back off! Back off!
And then we've got Mac and Me, and oh boy, where do we even start? If Blade Runner was too deep for its time, Mac and Me went completely in the other direction. This movie wasn't just a film, it was basically one giant commercial. A McDonald's and Coca-Cola ad dressed up like a heartwarming alien adventure. The plot is simple enough. A kid in a wheelchair meets a strange little alien named MAC, which literally stands for Mysterious Alien Creature. They become best buds, eat fast food together, and try to hide from the government. So far, so standard, but then the movie just goes off the rails. There's an actual dance-off in a McDonald's, complete with breakdancers and Ronald McDonald showing up like it's totally normal. You can't make this stuff up. Unsurprisingly, critics hated it. Audiences didn't show up. And it made just $6 million after spending over twice that. The sequel they teased at the end? Yeah, that never happened. But here's the thing. Mac and Me didn't totally disappear. Thanks to Paul Rudd's legendary prank on Conan, where he kept sneaking in a ridiculous clip from the movie, it found new life as a so-bad-it's-hilarious cult favorite. People still watch it just to laugh at how wild and ridiculous it is. It might not be a good movie, but it sure is unforgettable. These 12 movies came in loud, but proved that a big budget or famous name doesn't guarantee a hit. So which one did you actually watch, or wish you hadn't? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more movie flops, forgotten gems, and nostalgic throwbacks just like this.